Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. In this video, I am going to be asking and attempting to answer the question, what is truth? Now, those of you who, like me, have a background with Jehovah's Witnesses will have a certain perception of this word, or it will mean something perhaps slightly different, because, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses describe their religion as being the truth, which, if you think about it, is quite a manipulative thing to do, isn't it? It's loaded language intended to plant an idea in your mind, an idea that can stay in your mind long after you have left the religion, even long after you've stopped believing it to be true. You can still find yourself saying, when I was in the truth, in conversation. It just creeps out. It's an extremely effective strategy, again, of manipulation. So when I talk about truth, you can understand that I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who once believed in absolute truth being available to human beings who subscribe to the correct system of beliefs. And obviously this isn't unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. Again, they've perfected the art of using language to declare their religion to be the truth. And I'm sure there are other Christian denominations that use the word truth in the same way. But yes, Jehovah's Witnesses are far from the only religion or the only system of belief that subscribes to this idea of absolute truth. There is somewhere this repository of knowledge that you can have access to, and you can have answers to all of your questions. It may be impossible for you to know or remember everything, but again, at least there is this resource that you can draw from, be it a sacred book or a library of old literature containing all of this wisdom pointing to the one and only truth. Interestingly, the question, what is truth, is asked in the Bible, but it doesn't receive an answer. Some of you will be familiar with the exchange between Pontius Pilate and Jesus. If Tibor is gracious, we can read the text from the New World Translation, which is by no means an authoritative Bible version, but it still gives us the gist. So John 18 verses 37 and 38. So Pilate said to him, "Well then, are you a king?" Jesus answered, "You yourself are saying that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is on the side of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After saying this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him." It's always perplexed me that Pilate asked this question, what is truth, and it never received an answer from Jesus. Whether the question is supposed to be rhetorical or not, maybe it is. Maybe it was never intended for Jesus to give an answer. Maybe the mental image we're supposed to have is that Pilate just barked these words and then walked out. But in any case, it's an excellent question. It's a profound philosophical question. What is truth? Now, when you go to the dictionary, in fact, if you just type in to Google truth definition, it's interesting what comes up. You'll see there the definition, noun, the quality or state of being true. Well, that's fairly self-evident, isn't it? But then it gives us 2 bullet points, one for the noun, the truth, and one for the plural noun, The truth is that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. And then the plural noun, i.e., the emergence of scientific truths, is a fact or belief that is accepted as true. And I think here is where we start to run into problems, because just because something is accepted as true doesn't make it true. And what groups like Jehovah's Witnesses tend to do is push beliefs as facts when in fact they're not facts. They're not true. They routinely conflate their beliefs with being the truth. Now, interestingly, the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, famously said, "What is true for you is what you have observed yourself, and when you lose that, you have lost everything." Sounds great, doesn't it? What is true for you is what you have observed yourself. But again, is that a good arbiter of truth, simply what you have observed? Could it be that you could observe something, reach a conclusion, and your conclusion be in error because you haven't observed what you think you have observed? And I find this problem time after time when I'm having conversations with believers. They observe something or they have some kind of experience which is laden with what they consider to be truth, which is revelatory for them, so that having had this personal experience, perhaps they've prayed and they've had a feeling of calm descend upon them, a feeling of peace, or they've prayed for help with some problem in their lives and the problem has been miraculously fixed. So they've observed something and something has gone right for them. There's loads of confirmation bias going on. And then they reach this conclusion based on what they've observed. And it's just a wrong conclusion, or at the very least, it's incredibly subjective. Now, interestingly, I had an experience just a couple of days ago. I went to the coast with the children and we stayed by the sea in a harbour. And while we were there, did plenty of paddleboarding, did loads of swimming, really enjoyed the water. And when it was time to go, I was packing up the car. We were very fortunate to be actually staying right next to where the water was. So while I was packing up the car, I glanced out into the harbour, and in the distance, I saw two men paddleboarding on one paddleboard. And I thought to myself, amateurs, what are they doing? Because paddleboards typically have a capacity, and that capacity is usually suitable for one fully grown adult. You can sometimes get away with having a fully grown adult and maybe a small child, or in my experience, two small children, and it's still no problem to operate the paddleboard. But if you overload the paddleboard, it loses its stability in the water, and the likelihood of there being a capsizing or some other problem out on the water increases. So anyway, I saw these two guys and immediately reached a conclusion that they didn't know what they were doing. And I thought, well, good luck to them, but this is going to end in tears. Anyway, I returned to the property, grabbed some more bags, came back to the car to put these other bags in the car, and I glanced out again into the harbour, just interested to see what had become of these two guys, whether they were still afloat. And I could make out, again in the distance, that they were now on two different paddleboards. And I was perplexed. I was thinking, how have they done this? How have they produced from nowhere this second paddleboard? Was it there all along? And in the brief time it's taken me to grab these bags, they've somehow managed to make it so that they're now on two different paddleboards. And then it dawned on me what had happened. When I first saw them, I was looking at two men on two different paddleboards, but the angle between us made it look like they were only on one paddleboard. So that by the time I came back with more bags, the angle had changed, and it was then obvious, only with this new perspective, that my initial conclusion was wrong. And let's remember, my initial conclusion was so fleshed out based on what I was observing. Let's remember L. Ron Hubbard's words, what is true for you is what you have observed yourself. Well, I observed two guys on one paddleboard, but my observation was incorrect. It was from a flawed perspective, a limited perspective, and it led me to a wrong conclusion, and a wrong conclusion that even came with a character judgment that these two guys were inept, they didn't know what they were doing, they were silly, they were stupid, and it was all going to end in tears. So almost immediately after this experience, I thought, yeah, that is the problem with leaning too heavily on this idea of truth. I have the truth. My beliefs are true. I've observed them to be true. Unfortunately, it's not that simple in the majority of cases to arrive at truth. Truth requires more effort than simply doing a drive-by or simply having a whole bunch of information delivered on a plate for you. It often requires digging. It often requires you to apply nuance and see things from different perspectives before you can fully know something to be either true or not true. And making things even more difficult and more complicated is that we human beings have evolved to be pattern seekers. So we see something and a very primal part of our brain kicks into gear, a part of our brain that has served us very, very well, or at least has served our ancestors very, very well when it comes to survival. If you are able to spot patterns, then you are able to know the behavior of predators. You are able to plant your crops in the correct season. You are able to take evasive action when you notice certain cloud formations, etc., etc. Pattern seeking is a brilliant survival skill, but it can also lead us to error. It can lead us to reaching the wrong conclusions based on whatever pattern it is we think we are seeing. In order to know how the universe works, in order to understand the nature of reality, usually more work is required. Usually we need to apply the scientific method, especially with life's really big questions. So I don't know whether this video is helpful at all. I just thought, especially in the context of the way truth is used by Jehovah's Witnesses and other fundamentalist groups, it might be worthwhile just grappling with this simple question. I'm interested to know what you viewers make of this. Let me know whether you have in the past fallen for this trick so often used by cults of conflating truth with belief, and how you've managed to snap out of this way of thinking. But that's all we have time for. I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the Lloyd Evans channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.